a lot of people can get confused about is the difference between a restructuring and redundancies. When does restructuring turn into a redundancy situation? I think the first thing to think about really is the definition of redundancy. So redundancy is when there is a ceased or a diminished need for the kind of work the employee is doing at the location they're doing it. And sometimes that kind of is obvious when you're reducing the number of people you need to do something, or you're closing down a branch or something. But sometimes you're restructuring. So there might not necessarily, when you're doing a restructuring, you're changing roles and responsibilities. You might be changing how things work, how things run in the business. There's not necessarily a reduced amount of work. So you don't necessarily need fewer employees. You don't necessarily have less work available. You're just changing how it happens. So what do you do if you're going through a restructuring process? You might have employees who perhaps don't fit into the new structure. Maybe they don't have the right skills or the right experience, or the roles are just completely different. What do you do if you need to dismiss those people? Well, there are two options. I think the first option is that you could make them redundant anyway. You could go through a redundancy process anyway, even though maybe technically it's not a redundancy. And the advantage of doing that is that employees understand what redundancy means. They know what that is. If their job is no longer there, it is then redundancy, and they get some redundancy pay, which is obviously a good thing, and they go away knowing that their job is no longer there, therefore they were made redundant. So they might be perhaps less inclined to challenge a decision. Now, the other alternative, because it's not technically a redundancy situation, your alternative to make a dismissal would be SOSR, which is short for some other substantial reason. It's the kind of catch-all how to dismiss somebody when none of the other potential fair reasons fit. So in a restructuring situation where there is no reduction in work and no reduction in the need for the kind of work the person is doing, and you're just changing how things are run, technically it should be an SOSR dismissal. So that is your other option. The disadvantage of doing that is that people often don't understand what SOSR means. They might be more likely to challenge it, and because they're not going away with redundancy pay, they may not feel treated as fairly, that kind of thing. So while it might be technically the right approach, you may decide that doing it as a redundancy might feel better. So they're your two options when you've got restructuring and you need to dismiss people.